Let's go Broncos! Something is happening behind the scenes in Denver that honestly should have every single fan paying attention right now, because while the national media keeps focusing on how difficult the Broncos' schedule looks, very few people are talking about the hidden advantage that could completely change the course of this season. And once you see these numbers, you might start believing this team is much closer to becoming a true Super Bowl contender than most people realize. The pressure is building, expectations inside the organization are growing, and there are already projections putting Denver among the top teams in the entire AFC. But there's one detail connected to the schedule, the roster, and Sean Payton's plan that could become the difference between just making the playoffs and fighting for the number 1 seed. But before we go any further, make sure you smash that like button if you truly believe the Denver Broncos are coming back stronger than ever this season. And I want to see the real optimists in Broncos country flooding the comments right now with this message: Go Broncos! 2026 is our year. Let's see how many loyal fans still believe this team can shock the NFL this season. One of the most overlooked factors in the NFL every single year is net rest differential. Most casual fans ignore it because it doesn't sound flashy like quarterback stats or blockbuster trades. But inside league circles, this matters far more than people realize. The Broncos are entering the season with a positive +3 net rest advantage, making them the only team in the AFC West with a positive number. Meanwhile, division rivals are dealing with the opposite situation. The Chiefs sit at -1.5, the Raiders at -3.5, and the Chargers all the way down at -24, which is absolutely brutal over the course of a full NFL season. And this is where things get really interesting for Denver. People keep looking at the difficult schedule, but they're ignoring the physical side of football. Rest matters. Recovery matters. Extra preparation matters. A few additional recovery days can completely change how a team performs late in games, especially during critical divisional matchups. Injuries pile up fast in the NFL, and one small edge can be the difference between securing a playoff bye or fighting for survival late in the year. What makes this even more encouraging is the comparison to last season. Denver actually had a negative rest differential in 2025 and still managed to finish as the number 1 overall seed. Now imagine flipping that disadvantage into a positive advantage. That alone gives fans a legitimate reason to believe this team can be even stronger moving forward. And when you look around the league, there's evidence that these advantages matter. Teams near the top in net rest differential last season consistently ended up making deep postseason runs. That's why some people inside Broncos circles are quietly calling this one of the hidden schedule wins nobody noticed at first glance. Now let's talk about the bigger conversation surrounding this roster, because ESPN's projections are already creating debate among Broncos fans. According to the projections mentioned, Denver is expected to finish with around 10.9 wins, basically an 11-win football team, which would rank among the best records in the NFL. Their overall win probability across all games was listed at 64%, and defensively, the Broncos continue getting massive respect after ranking near the top of the league in several key categories including sacks, pressure rate, and net yards allowed. But the real discussion starts on offense. There's a growing belief that national media still doesn't fully understand what this offense is about to become. Some projections around the roster feel completely disconnected from what's actually happening inside Denver. One of the biggest examples is the expectation surrounding Jonah Coleman. The projection discussed only had him finishing with 85 rushing yards for the season, and honestly, that feels wildly unrealistic considering the role Denver appears ready to give him. The belief internally is that Jonah Coleman is going to play a very important role as an early down physical runner who can help balance the workload in the backfield. The Broncos clearly want to protect J.K. Dobbins throughout the season and avoid overworking him, which means there will absolutely be opportunities for Coleman to contribute meaningful carries every week. Even modest usage would put him well beyond those early projections. Then there's the conversation around Troy Franklin. Some projections expect a very small production season, but many around the team believe he can comfortably surpass those expectations. The same goes for Jalen Watt, who continues generating excitement because of his explosive efficiency as a receiver. The numbers mentioned about his yards per target since 2022 are eye-opening and suggest Denver may have a much bigger offensive weapon than many analysts are acknowledging right now. What's becoming clear is that this Broncos offense is no longer being built to simply survive games. It's being built to attack defenses with depth, rotation, and versatility. Sean Payton understands this team has to score more consistently if they truly want to compete for the top seed again, and all signs point toward major changes in offensive philosophy and personnel usage this year. And maybe the most shocking part of all these projections is this: Denver was listed with the third highest probability in the AFC to secure the number 1 overall seed, only behind Buffalo and Baltimore. Think about how massive that statement is. After years of frustration, inconsistency, and questions about the future, the Broncos are now being viewed as a legitimate contender near the top of the conference again. There's still a long road ahead, and nobody is pretending this season will be easy, especially with how challenging the early schedule looks. But if the defense remains elite, if the offense takes the expected leap forward, and if the roster depth performs the way many inside Denver believe it can, then this team absolutely has a chance to shock the NFL once again. The biggest thing Broncos fans need to understand right now is that this team is no longer operating like an underdog hoping to sneak into the playoffs. The expectations inside the organization are changing, and you can feel it when people start discussing Denver alongside teams like Buffalo and Baltimore in conversations about the number 1 seed. That's not accidental. That's a reflection of how much respect this roster has quietly earned after last season. And honestly, one of the reasons this team feels different heading into the season is because the roster construction finally looks balanced. For years, Broncos fans watched this team either lean too heavily on defense or completely struggle to find defensive identity. But now there's a growing sense that Sean Payton is building a complete football team instead of just patching weaknesses week by week. You can especially see that with how the backfield is being discussed internally. A lot of people still think J.K. Dobbins is simply going to carry the entire load himself, but the reality is much more strategic than that. Denver understands the importance of keeping players healthy for a full postseason run. The conversation around lowering his carries slightly while bringing Jonah Coleman into early down situations tells you everything about how this coaching staff is thinking long term. They're not just trying to win September football games. They're trying to have their best players healthy when January arrives. That's where this offense could become dangerous in ways people outside Denver are underestimating. If Jonah Coleman truly becomes that physical complementary runner, defenses are going to have to deal with fresh legs constantly rotating into games. And over a 17-game season, that absolutely wears teams down, especially in cold weather football late in the year when controlling the line of scrimmage becomes everything. Then you add in the receiving threats being discussed, and suddenly this offense starts looking far more explosive than national analysts are projecting. The conversation around Troy Franklin having another productive year is important because Denver desperately needs reliable vertical pressure in this offense. Stretching defenses changes everything for Sean Payton's playbook. It opens space underneath, creates opportunities for the run game, and forces safeties into impossible decisions. And the excitement around Jalen Watt continues to grow for good reason. When you hear the statistic about leading wide receivers in yards per target over multiple seasons, that's not just a random number. That's efficiency at an elite level. That's the type of production that changes games with only a handful of touches. Denver clearly believes he can become one of the major difference makers in this offense, and if he really does surpass 1,100 receiving yards like predicted in the discussion, this entire offense reaches another level. But here's the part that should seriously excite Broncos country the most. The defense may still be the foundation that carries this team into contender status. ESPN's projections showed massive respect for what Denver accomplished defensively, ranking near the top of the NFL in sacks, pressure rate, passing defense, and overall impact metrics. That kind of consistency wins championships. And if the offense simply takes even a moderate step forward, this suddenly becomes one of the most balanced teams in football. That's why the difficult early schedule may actually become the best thing that could happen to this team. Think about it. If Denver survives that brutal opening stretch and comes out battle-tested instead of broken, the confidence inside the locker room could skyrocket. Great teams are often forged through adversity early in the season. And because of the positive rest differential later in the year, the Broncos could be positioned perfectly to peak at exactly the right time while divisional rivals are wearing down physically. Another thing fans should not ignore is how much confidence there seems to be around the idea that Denver can legitimately compete for the AFC West title. For the first time in a long time, there's growing belief that this division is not untouchable